Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News. First off, I want to follow up on a story from yesterday because there were some developments that are just too spectacular not to touch on. And that's the Michelle MacLaren leaves Wonder Woman over creative differences story. Now, some of you forwarded me a leak from who knows where about what Michelle MacLaren's ideas were for the Wonder Woman project. And apparently, she was like, hey guys, I think that Wonder Woman should have a tiger sidekick who she can talk to. And apparently, she had gotten that, Michelle MacLaren, from some old Wonder Woman comic of some sort. Now, I can only hope that this is a smear tactic from Warner Brothers to try and make themselves look good. Like, hey, Michelle MacLaren had some crazy ideas. We were justified in parting ways. And if they are not a smear tactic, and that's really what Michelle MacLaren suggested, then I think Warner Brothers was quite polite to say they parted over creative differences. Instead, Michelle MacLaren went batshit crazy. So that's really unfortunate to see if that is the case. And I would have to say, on a side note, I just want to make the point that once again, I feel like this is female directors shooting themselves in the foot because they don't understand the demographic, they don't understand the job. I used to call this the Hearts and Unicorn problem, where, female directors wanted to change things to, meet their criteria, being like, oh, I want to make my version of a blockbuster. And I think this is a very important lesson for everybody in every situation, is that you can't change the status quo until you get to be a part of the status quo, right? So, hey, Michelle, direct a couple of really successful blockbusters, and then you can go flat on your face. I don't think a Wonder Woman with a tiger sidekick would work for anybody, but, I think that female directors, anybody, you shouldn't be able to be like, oh, hey, this is obviously directed by a woman, right? Because they put this touchy-feely crap in there. You should make the best Wonder Woman movie possible, and ideally you would have no idea the gender or the agenda of the director behind the camera. So this is very disappointing indeed. And, again, I think Warner Brothers is quite polite, although I think because maybe the way the story was developing, with people like me being like, hey, Warner Brothers is horrible, no wonder she would leave, I think probably somebody was like, we tried to be polite, but the story's turning to the point where we look bad, so we're going to have someone from The Office leak this horrible, horrible idea. Or it's a smear tactic. We'll see. I wonder what you think it is. The smear tactic is more wishful thinking on my part. It does seem that it was just a horrible, horrible idea. And now I wonder if anybody would hire Michelle MacLaren after that story made the rounds yesterday. All right, so before we get started on the 3 stories for the day and the viewer question, there's one other thing I want to tell you. And that's that tomorrow, Thursday, April 16th, is a really big day for genre movie fans. It's huge. It's like the eclipse or something. It's like everybody go out to your computer, it might be too bright, put some sunglasses on so you don't hurt your eyes, and bask in the glory of what you're about to behold. So what's happening? Well, that Batman v Superman trailer is coming early. At 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, which is 12 noon Eastern Standard Time, Zack Snyder is going to put the first 5 seconds of the Batman v Superman trailer up online. And then on Monday, apparently you're going to be able to go to a theater and see it. I think this is like the Star Wars Force Awakens teaser, where they said they were going to debut it in theaters and it popped up online anyway. I think that's what's going to happen. So probably on Monday, expect this trailer to drop in full. But on Thursday, tomorrow, you're going to get a sneak peek of the first 5 seconds. And why are they debuting it early? Well, Warner Brothers, they're getting pretty aggressive over there. They're cutting loose Michelle MacLaren with her ridiculous ideas, and now they're like, you know what? Screw it. We're putting our trailer in front of Avengers: Age of Ultron, and we're going to try and just really overshadow the movie before it begins. I think that's a very aggressive move. I'm sure Disney is like, can they do that? Can we just say, please don't air their trailer in front of our movie? But you can't do that. You can attach a trailer to a movie. You can demand that a certain trailer be shown with it, and the way they do that is they attach the trailer literally to the print that's going to be screened. But you can't, you can't say, no, you can't air your trailer with my movie. But I think that's a very aggressive move on DC's part. They must feel they have something special. They're like, we can't wait until Mad Max. Why should we? So they're putting Star Wars in front of the Avengers: Age of Ultron movie as a trailer. This is clearly a big event. We should be there too, to show that we have what it takes to compete in this arena now. So I'm pretty darn excited. And then also tomorrow, after that, an hour later, there's a panel for Star Wars that begins at 1 obviously 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 10 a.m. and 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and that's when the Force Awakens panel will begin at the Star Wars Celebration, which begins also tomorrow, and it's highly expected that they're going to debut the first full trailer for that film as well. So what a day! Stay tuned here to Beyond the Trailer, the main channel. I'll be covering all of that, getting up the content as fast as I can, but I'm very, very excited because I have very high expectations for both those trailers. Alright, so let's get on to today's morning movie news. What stories could possibly be left? How can anything seem exciting in the wake of that news? Well, I'm going to try. And the first is about Guardians of the Galaxy, where James Gunn has revealed some interesting things about the upcoming sequel. And he said that it's going to be a story about fathers. He said the first movie was a story about, Star-Lord's mother, which I actually don't agree with. I think that was, if that was his intention, I don't really think it was fully realized, because I think I understand the importance of his mother, obviously passing away, and that these were her favorite songs, but I think it was real peripheral. I wouldn't really say it's a movie about Star-Lord's relationship with his mother. But we'll see what happens here with Guardians of the Galaxy 2 and how much the father aspect is brought in. Now, as people are pointing out, he said fathers plural, so there are actually some very interesting routes that can be taken with each of the members of the Guardians of the Galaxy in terms of parentage. But first off, I want to reiterate something that James Gunn said, and that's that I'm looking at J'son, which is the space version of Jason, will not be the father of Star-Lord, our Peter Quill. And that J'son is the leader of the Spartoid Empire, and he actually, I think he was mostly like a deadbeat dad, in the comics, but recently in the Guardians of the Galaxy run, they've made him a villain. He's like called Mr. Knife. He like rides a living spaceship. It's a little bit convoluted. So I think they were like, we don't want to go in that direction, and maybe they don't want to introduce the Spartoid. They're like, we've got the Inhumans, we've got the Kree. We have enough aliens that we're bringing in here. We don't need additional alien people, especially because we don't, we're with Marvel Cosmic, we're probably just going to have Captain Marvel and the Inhumans and, Thanos with the Infinity Gauntlet. We don't need that stuff. So they said that Star-Lord's father will actually be somebody else, which is a very, very interesting choice. Now, here's my guess. My guess it might be Adam Warlock. We've seen The Cocoon, and I'm reading Infinity War for the first time, actually. Civil War I reread. I really enjoyed that again. Mark Millar, I think, say what you will about some of his gimmicky aspects to his work, but he's a very good writer, and I think he's a cinematic writer. Whereas Infinity War is like old school comic book writing, where you're like, Hootie Woody, this is like Grant Morrison wrote it. And you're like, these are too many characters, and you're tying into things that are crazy, and like Adam Warlock's evil doppelganger, who I don't think is going to be in Infinity War the movie, is like does a lot of monologuing. In the Incredibles, they made fun of that. The Incredibles really, discredited capes and monologuing, and it's hard to imagine anybody doing that after that movie because it really called it out on that, called the genre out on those stereotypes. But there's a lot of capes too, I guess to some degree, but there's a heck of a lot of monologuing in Infinity War. I'm just like, this is really boring. But anyway, Adam Warlock, of course, is a huge character in this story, and so are the Guardians of the Galaxy. But Star-Lord is nowhere to be seen, so it's like, wow, clearly Star-Lord's going to have to take Adam Warlock's spot, or Chris Pratt's going to have nothing to do. But then, Adam Warlock's cocoon did show up at in the collector's collection in the first Guardians of the Galaxy. It's like an Easter egg. So why would you put that in there if you weren't going to potentially bring Adam Warlock into the sequel, right? And Adam Warlock, I think, would cancel out Star-Lord. You can't have two alpha male characters in the movie, right? I guess Avengers gets away with it, but I think they have a lot of character development left on the table with Guardians because they don't have solo films. So how do you fix that problem? You make Adam Warlock Star-Lord's papa. So that would be my guess. But then you create an interesting Scott Summers and Christopher Summers situation, where Scott Summers, aka Cyclops, discovered that his father was a space pirate with the Starjammers, Star-Lord, Starjammers. So I think that's very interesting. It would be another thing that Marvel like cherry picks out of the stuff they gave to somebody else, and they're kind of like an Indian giver. They're like, oh, you can have the X-Men property, Fox, but we're taking a bunch of stuff from it because if you don't use it, we're going to use it. So I think Fox might be like, we better bring in Christopher Summers. So what are the other fathers that could be introduced into this sequel? Well, you have obviously Gamora and Nebula. Their father is Thanos, and we're moving very quickly, well, pretty quickly towards Thanos' big moment in Infinity War, Avengers 3 and 4. And then also Drax lost his child. I don't know if they're going to explore that, but he's a human who was made into this being. We'll see if that's still the case. They tweak continuity all the time. Even Marvel's guilty of it. But he lost his wife and his child. So that could be explored. And then, of course, the lack of parentage for Rocket Raccoon could be explored. He's an experiment. So I think, I thought some of the best moments, well, all the best moments in Guardians of the Galaxy to me were Rocket Raccoon and Groot. I loved both those characters. And I felt really bad when they showed, Rocket take off his shirt and he had his cute little scarred back. It was very sad, and they were able to accomplish that with no dialogue. So I thought that was excellent. And of course, he's very upset, when anybody calls him a raccoon. He has quite the chip on his shoulder because of his situation, which is earned, of course. So that could be very interesting. And also, what's going on with Groot? What's family like for where he comes from? So I think that could be interesting. It would be interesting if James Gunn could, take things to that level. And also, if people want him to take things to that level, do you want a touchy-feely Guardians of the Galaxy? Because the first one wasn't. So while, I think I enjoy movies like that, I know a lot of us do, not everything has to be, have an incredible amount of depth. So I'm curious if that's what you want to see in Guardians of the Galaxy 2. All right, so that's the first story of the day. Now, talking about sequels, a big story from last week, which I've only been able to fit in now, is that Sofia Boutella, who played Gazelle in Kingsman: The Secret Service, she was the one with the blade legs, like Oscar Pistorius, Blade Runner. She has landed another gig, and she's going to be in Star Trek 3. Very exciting. She's supposed to have a pretty big role for director Justin Lin, but they haven't given any hint as to what it is. Is she a good guy? Is she a bad guy? I would guess bad guy. Although I would caution them. They said Idris Elba is also up for a role here, and they're saying that might be perhaps the Klingons. And I think it would be really unfortunate to take. They have Zoe Saldana obviously in these films, but I think it would be really unfortunate to take most of your non-white characters, put them in Klingon makeup, right? You'd be like, what? I would prefer for them to fight aliens that perhaps didn't look, and Klingons are, when they had the whole sequence in Star Trek Into Darkness, it seemed a little too old school to me personally. But then I'm not a Trekkie, so maybe Trekkies were like, I'm loving this, more of this, please. So I'm curious to how you want to see Star Trek develop in terms of its villains. But I'm very happy for Sofia Boutella. I thought she did a really good job as a henchwoman in Kingsman: The Secret Service. She had some amazing action sequences, and she did a really good job, especially because, those were CGI, obviously. I got to talk to her on the red carpet. Unfortunately, I didn't use the footage, but I can share it with you here, and that's because there was an issue with another camera person. We won't get into it, but she said that the way she was able to simulate the bounce of the blades that she was wearing was she wore like stiletto high heels. So I think she's a really clever actress, and going from dancing to the kind of action sequences that she did was really, really impressive. So I'm very happy for her. But I have to say, this story also really kind of made me feel, what the hell, Hollywood? Colin Firth was amazing as an action hero. Why is nobody else hiring him in that capacity, right? So I was a little frustrated. I'm a little frustrated about that, but I'm glad that, casting directors do have Kingsman: The Secret Service on their radar, and I hope that Colin Firth does get called, for another action movie, especially because, they say they're going to be able to bring him back somehow for a Kingsman 2, but it's largely going to be an Eggsy movie. So I loved his Harry Hart. I thought his Harry Hart was actually the best part of the film, and I love the idea of him, Colin Firth, an actor like that, as an action hero, especially because he succeeded so astoundingly. So I'm curious, do you want to see Colin Firth do more action movies, or do you think he should only do them when it's in service of the Secret Service? All right, so the third story of the day, this is just something that really blew me away when it was announced yesterday, and this is that Jake Gyllenhaal is doing a musical. He's doing it for City Center here in New York City. He's only doing, I believe, 3 performances on July 1st and 2nd, or 2nd and 3rd, but it's 2 evenings and 1 afternoon performance. And what is, I believe it's a charity event, but what is it? It's Little Shop of Horrors, and he's playing Seymour. I'm in love with that. And I think Jake Gyllenhaal is such an exciting actor right now, and I think he's working so hard to build himself up as an exciting actor. With his amazing work on Nightcrawler, he has Southpaw coming up. That trailer blew me away, as you might recall from my trailer review. And then, he just came off of a successful Broadway run, and now opposite Ruth Wilson. And now, for him to go into a musical like this, just a quick little pit stop, but such a great choice. Alan Menken is involved in this restaging, of course, of the musical that put him and Howard Ashman on the map and on Disney's radar, which became an amazing relationship. And I think that it's such great casting for him to take the Rick Moranis role, if you're most familiar with the film, that I'm just so excited about it. I wish I could go, but tickets were like $5,000 for a good ticket. They were like, do you want to donate to City Center? And I was like, I'm not a millionaire, but I like Jake Gyllenhaal. That really sucks. But, if you're in the New York area, there might be some tickets left. Last I checked, they were only available for that matinee performance, I believe on the 2nd, July 2nd. But I think this is a fantastic idea for Jake Gyllenhaal. I wonder if he's a good singer, but I think that he continues to choose really, really interesting roles. And it's interesting, I went from not particularly liking Jake Gyllenhaal, although when I rewatched City Slickers, I'd say maybe about a year ago, I was like, hey, Jake Gyllenhaal! Awesome. But I've become such a big Jake Gyllenhaal fan, I'd say about the last year or so. I'm just so impressed. And I know some of you have been a Jake Gyllenhaal fan since Donnie Darko, but I'm wondering, have any of you come on board recently like myself? And what do you think of him doing this performance? Do you think this is a good career move? I think it's brilliant. So much of Hollywood is image. And I think, again, he's crafting, just like McConaughey crafted a really, the ramp up to his eventual win with Dallas Buyers Club. I'm hoping that maybe this is what Gyllenhaal is doing. He's really trying to build that ramp. And he's come close before, but he's had problems. All right, so let's get on to the viewer question. This is from Hey Jay Hugs. And he says, hey Grace, I listen to morning movie news every day on my walks to class and back home. Oh, awesome, Jay. I hope that you have a good day ahead of you, or you had a good day, depending on which end of the walk this is. And he says, it's become part of my daily routine. Oh, I love to hear that. I love to hear how you guys experience morning movie news and incorporate it into your day. And he continues saying, I have a question about Frozen 2 and Disney sequels in general. It seems like nearly every animated Disney movie has at least one sequel, and every sequel is a flop, save Pixar and the Lion King sequels. Why is it that Disney Animation hasn't produced good sequels, and do you think Frozen will follow the trend? Thanks for making the video. Smiley face, Jason. Thank you, Jason. Great question. I would like to point out, though, that there is one good sequel, I think, to animated Disney animation, and that's Cinderella, A Stitch Out of Time. I think that was pretty good. It was very clever. That was actually the second was the third in the series. It was part of the Disney Cinderella trilogy, but it was the second direct-to-video sequel. And I think that is the most basic answer to your question. In the past, most sequels, save a few, like Rescuers Down Under, were direct-to-video films. And so I think that the bar for quality goes down exponentially. Now, of course, you would think that nothing Disney puts out should be low in quality. And I think back when Walt was in charge, that was the case. Everything was high quality. But I think that when Disney became more corporate after Walt's death, corporate after Walt's death, they fell into some of the old bad habits that plague Hollywood. And that's, they created a division that was responsible for doing a lot of the animation for the small screen, and a lot of the talent just wasn't there. However, interestingly, that talent was there back in the day with some of their animated series. But in terms of animation, animated sequels, they were just not on the level of the feature films, which is unfortunate. When you have people approach sequels today, and even back in the day when they were doing like multiple Indiana Jones and Star Wars and stuff, they were putting the top talent on the job. Now, animation didn't quite used to gross like it does today. I mean, The Lion King did, but I think that you've seen the numbers rise exponentially just in the past couple of years, which is why the animation market has gotten so crowded. And so I think that's one reason why I think you're starting, maybe even Disney Animation is moving towards sequels. Pixar has done very well in the sequel business, even though they once said they would never do it. Never say never. And I think, of course, Frozen was so incredibly successful that Disney would be crazy not to follow up with it with a theatrical film. Now, I feel that the first Frozen had lots of problems, so I have, low expectations for a sequel. And as I've said before, I feel that the most important aspect of getting the sequel, putting it together, is hiring a great writer. I think that Jennifer Lawrence, I've been thinking about this recently, Jennifer Lee. I feel that, I have a lot to do today. I apologize for the name mix-up. But Jennifer Lee, I think, is kind of like the David Goyer of Disney Animation. Fantastic idea person. Can't be topped. And I mean that about David Goyer. Yes, I said something nice about David Goyer. I think he's a great idea man. But in terms of execution, I think they're both very poor. And I think that both of those and people were very excited to see David Goyer get the lowest writing billing for upcoming Batman v Superman when they just recently announced the credits. Some of you tweeted that to me. But I think that the success of both areas, DC films and Disney animation movies, will really depend on both of those individuals admitting to themselves and to their employers that they are idea people and not screenwriters. So I think that very strongly that somebody else needs to come in and write Frozen 2. But I think whenever there's a lot of money on the line, Hollywood suddenly gets their act together. And I think that's what's suddenly happening with Disney animation. So I think going forward, you probably will see more sequels to Disney animated films. I wouldn't be surprised if you saw a sequel to Big Hero 6 as well. And I think they'll put better people on it. But where's our Wreck-It Ralph sequel, right? Where's our Tangled sequel? It depends if, Disney Animation wants to get into the sequel business, because as you can see from Pixar, that eats up a lot of production time, and it really significantly lowers the amount of original films that are released. So it's a tough decision for these companies to make. I think they should just expand and have more people working, right? But then you potentially oversaturate the market, which really hurt DreamWorks Animation. Animation is in a difficult position right now because there are so many people competing, so many studios competing, and so much content and so much product. And then there's great stuff online and great stuff on television. It's just a really hard time. And you can see what happened to Studio Ghibli as a result. Interesting situation. We'll see how it eventually all shakes out. But I have high hopes for Frozen 2. I hope Disney gets their act together. But I think that Disney Animation's biggest problem, actually, I would agree even with Big Hero 6, is writing. It's really writing. And I think that's Hollywood's problem overall these days, and it's why TV is trumping them. So that's the number one answer. But in the past, it's been that Disney just hasn't taken the sequel seriously, Jason, and has put lesser talent, I wouldn't say lesser talent, because everybody can eventually get up there and learn the ropes. So I'd say less experienced talent. And also, they've demanded less of the sequels. They're like, it's good enough, put it out there, put it out on DVD. People will buy it just to park their kids in front of it. And I think if that's what the criteria you have for any kind of endeavor, you failed from the gate, right? Nothing should just be a babysitter. A lot of you accuse me of always focusing on the business aspects of film, but it's a balance. It's a very delicate balance. And when you truly succeed is when you balance the business with the art. You can't forget about either one from either side. All right, thank you so much for your question, Jason. I hope that my answer shed some light on it for you. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in today. Please write down below what you think of today's top 3 stories and the viewer question, anything you'd like to see covered tomorrow, and any questions that you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.